Welcome to the Page by Page podcast. I'm Megan O'Russell.
And I am Christopher Russell. And this is a really exciting venture for us. We had a podcast going on for a while called A Book and a Dream. Consider that all a prologue to this. This is the main event, Page by Page. So, Megan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself for those that are just joining in for season 2?
Season 2
of A Book and a Dream.
Fancy. I am an author. I usually write something between epic fantasy and paranormal dystopian. A lot of my books are YA, but not all of them. Some of them push the upper boundaries of YA. They reach a little bit past that. The project that we are using for Page by Page is, in fact, a YA paranormal contemporary piece. So that is the part of my authorage we are focusing on for the podcast. And would you like to share the subtitle of the podcast? We haven't done that yet.
Oh, that's true. We have not done that
yet. And it helps explain what the podcast is.
So the full title of the podcast is Page by Page, Writing the Book in Real Time. So why don't you explain, what does that mean? What is this madness that you have drawn both of us into? Or wait, should we put this on hold and introduce our beer of the week?
Oh, sure. Yes, please.
We can start with that. Okay, so this beer is a beer that we picked up when we were at the Three Rivers Comic-Con in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It is called Woo Brew, and it says that it's aged in old missile silos. I don't know if that's true. It was a comic thing that was drawn on it. I should have remembered to grab the can so I could show off the really cool art.
It will be in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes.
There will be a link in the show notes. So.
All right, but cheers.
To Page by Page.
So this is the inaugural episode, and we are going to have a beer every week.
You know why? You may think, YA publishing, what does that have to do with beer? Because this is terrifying. What I'm attempting to do here is terrifying to me, and sometimes when you're doing terrifying things, it goes better with beer.
Yes.
So the question you had for me was, what are we doing with this podcast?
Yes. So why this? Like, why have we decided? Like, explain, what is this pod?
This pod is the Page by Page podcast. Is about going through the process of creating a novel, literally step by step. I've started doing a lot of live events like Comic-Cons, author events, things like that. And I have a lot of people come to me and ask me questions about being an author and writing and the publishing process. And I love getting those questions and I love answering them. I'm actually quite passionate about helping new authors. And as I was creating this new series, I wanted to take this opportunity to share with everyone the actual process that I go through chapter by chapter, stage by stage, from page 1 of writing a book all the way through to, in this case, having a super fancy hardback of the book.
Yes, You're getting a little ahead of me here. So what I want to add in, if you will, is the fact that we have started this at the same time that we just an hour ago finished edits of the first part of the book. So that is how fresh all of this is. Like, this is going to be how it is every week. She's going to write, edit. I'm going to edit. We're going to look at it together and just get enough ready to be prepared for the podcast. And I have no idea what happens after this. I know a little bit about the world.
So every chapter, I will be writing one. Every week, there we go. Sorry. Every week, I will be writing one chapter in the book. And in the podcast, we will be sharing that chapter, talking about where in the publication process we are, what's going on with cover designs and art that I want for the book's interior, and where pre-orders are going up, and what files I need for those, and all those kinds of things that I get so many questions about. I want to share that information with you as we go. So that's kind of the cool thing, is that as the book is written, I will be sharing things with you, which is kind of also the terrifying thing, because as I write the book, it's going to be going out into the world, which is very different than everything I've done before, hence the beer, because usually I have a lot of time to like sit with something before I sort of cement it and send it out, and it becomes canon, and I don't have that time now because I want to share the whole process.
Right. Well, and it goes through more editors than just me. Like I have been your I can say primary editor and preliminary editor for all 31 of your novels so far. Well, with the exception of the ones that were traditionally published before you took the rights back. We don't have to get into that. But this time it's just me and you. That's it. So this is a real test of both of our mettle, if you will. So you had mentioned doing a hardback edition at the end of this. So let's go back through. You write, we podcast, and you're going to publish this on a serial app. And then this is all leading up to the Kickstarter. So share a little bit more about that with us.
So as the chapters are shared on the podcast, I will also be sharing them on a TBD serial platform. We're still working on the final details of that one, so it will be shared in the next episode for sure. But they will be going out on those serial platforms. And at the end of the season of the podcast, when the book is fully complete, then there will be a Kickstarter. I'm going to run a Kickstarter so that we can make a really, really cool hardback edition of this book with extras from the podcast. And there's some really, really cool art extras that I'm already working on. And I just want there to be this glorious hardcover book that I can share with all of you, because this is going to be quite a journey for me, and I am so excited to bring everybody along with me because I am freaking out about it.
Well, it's different. I mean, I can't think of anyone that's done this kind of thing before exactly. Like, I'm sure books have been podcasts, like a good friend, one of our good friends that runs YA Book Chat, like that's, they do that kind of stuff all the time. But how often does an author read it as it is being written?
I don't know if I know of anyone who's doing quite this format.
Yeah.
But if there is someone, I would really like to know who they are.
Yeah, so let us know.
I can find out what kind of ulcer medication they have.
That's fair. So,
who's your therapist?
Yeah, right.
What ulcer medication do you take?
Cheers.
Pantoprazole.
Mm-hmm. So you touched on the Kickstarter a little bit. Tell us a little bit about the team that you're working with on this. Like, I know you've already spoken to your PA, or I guess I should say our PA, because I'm so ensconced in this with you.
Well,
Gladly.
you are stuck with me. You married me, and now you're podcasting.
And this is when I take another drink of beer.
So I already actually have my two PAs, my PA and her helper, working on this with me, helping me figure out how to get everything going for the Kickstarter, because I don't want the Kickstarter to be something that's thrown together at the end. I want it to be something that's a part of the process from the beginning, so that as I build the extras that go with the podcast, because since I'm sharing the writing process with you, I often create little extras for myself as I write, and I want to share those things with you. And so having the Kickstarter version of the book would let me share those little things that I create as I go in a really cool way that wouldn't make sense outside the podcast, but I want to have that done for that portion. I also have my manager and I have been talking about some cool ideas for how we can make this work. I already have 2 artists that I'm talking to for different things. Mm-hmm. So I've taken more meetings for this project than I have for anything but Bryant during the Hollywood phase.
Well, did you mention? Oh yeah, yes, Bryant.
Story for another time.
Yeah, that is. Did you mention your cover artist at all?
Oh, 2 artists. I have 2 artists.
Oh, right.
I have 2 artists and a cover artist. So I have 3 artists.
And luckily, we were actually able to convince your cover artist, Kelly, with Sleepy Fox Studio, that she would be willing to drop one of the projects she was already working on for you to pivot, and work on this project. We're stoked to have Kelly. She has done the vast majority.
She's collaborating with one of the other artists for me. There's so many moving pieces. It's already a lot. I'm so excited. I dove into this thing head first, and wow, it was a long dive, and I'm still swimming. We're still building this thing, and I'm so excited.
It's really exciting. Okay, so let's actually get into it. Let's talk a little bit about this world that it didn't start here, but it really, I feel like, began to come to fruition, or at least become a more realized idea on our recent trip to Portugal. We went to a place called the Quinta de la Regalera, where there was the well of initiation and everything. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the world that started to form in your mind as you saw these beautiful places in real life?
Okay, we're still waiting to share the title for the big reveal?
Yeah. No, there's a big reveal. I'll even put I'll write a little music cue for it.
Yes.
I'm composing the music for the podcast, by the way.
Well, you've done it for NPR.
I have done it for NPR. That's true.
As my husband's composed a podcast intro for NPR, I want one too.
Yeah.
So the Staircase of Initiation, and check out the video or show notes, and I will have a link to an image of it there. It's this well that goes down, but there's a spiral staircase that follows all the way down with these beautiful arches. And the thought is that as you go down this well, you shed more and more layers of artifice so that by the time you get down there, you are your true self.
Of artifice. I love that.
Oh, thanks.
Nice. Well said. It's like you're an author.
Oh, fancy. And something else that is also based in that region is tarot cards. So there was this idea of like seeing and the future, and then it kind of got wrapped up in symbols, and then things started to morph quite quickly as they do. And yeah, it spiraled into a very different idea that does not have to do initially with the Well of Initiation.
I was going to ask you about that. So the Well of Initiation, it is going to be a part of this series,
yes,
but it is not planned for this first portion, right, of the book. Maybe you'll get there.
It will not play a primary role in the plot of book one.
Okay. I want to talk more about this because I remember conversations we had, but I feel like we shouldn't because that's going to get into spoiler territory. So we're going to leave it alone. Like what she experiences.
I can't tell you that much because
I can't know.
Part of the whole point of this is that you don't know what's going to happen, yes, so that it is different levels of the journey we can share because I'm a big old dork like that.
That's that. Well, yes, we both are. Okay, so then do you want to get into the actual text, or is there anything else you want to touch on first?
Sure. So a little background about the book.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
So,
right ahead.
Wait, is it time
the
to
title?
insert
Let's
the music?
do it. Well, yeah, we'll insert the music. Okay. Note to future self: insert music here. There it is. Okay, so go ahead. This is the grand reveal.
The title of the book is Sketchbook of a Wayward Seer, and this is Laureldale, Book 1. Now, Laureldale is a town in the mountains. It is going to be set in upstate New York, which means snow. Hurts my soul, but I needed big forested mountains, so it's gonna be an upstate.
We just moved to Florida recently because of snow. We don't. Well, yeah,
it's beautiful, but I've done that, been there, grew up in the Adirondacks. It's a lot.
Yes.
So it is in Laureldale, in the mountains, mountainy town. What else do I want to tell them? Do we need to tell them anything else about our protagonist, or just let them?
Well, I was going to have you touch. Well, no, actually, I was going to have you touch on that a little bit before that. I was like, did I put that before or after the sample in the show notes? Yeah, go ahead and talk about our protagonist a little bit. I think that's a great idea.
Okay, how much do I want you to know right now? Usually I don't have to worry about that so soon in the process. How much do I want them to know? I can worry about that when I've already been writing the book for 6 weeks. Not so much now. Oh, that's stressful. Don't mind my nervous breakdown.
Drink your juice, Shelby.
Oh, okay.
Also, I'm going to put in a side note here that she has decided that I will be reading the book. Now, the book takes place in the first person point of view, and it is a teenage girl that is reading it. So I implore you, if you would rather hear her read it, just let us know.
No, because when it gets to just a little bit of spicy bits, I think it would be hilarious if you read it, and I want people to enjoy it with
exactly me. Okay. All right. That's fine. All right. So please continue.
So Ella is a Sibyl, and so what that means in this world is that she is born of a supernatural species, but instead of being that, she is born to be a seer. And there is a lot of backstory and thousands of years and things like that, but you don't need to know those things right now. All you need to know is that this is modern. She is a teenage girl. She is a seer, and poor girl's been through it. It's so hard because there's so much I want to say about her, because the way that this is being written, I have more notes for this series than I've ever started a writing process with.
Right, because
I'm sharing it before I'm sharing the next chapter, so I'm not doing it in like bigger chunks. I don't even know what to say about her.
Yeah, no, that's fair because there are things that I know about her too that I'm like, that might.
So I think we just have to dive in.
Yeah.
Let's dive in, and then we can talk more about her after you read the little sample chapter.
Okay, great. Oh, here, let me fix your hair real quick. For those of you watching the video, you might notice me. It is a romance podcast. You might notice me glancing down at my watch every now and then. That's because I have the video going on my watch. I want to make sure everything is is flowing the way that it should. So just in case you're like, what is he doing? That's why. And then also glancing down at my podcast notes.
You're the love of my life.
Their choices were made.
This is a romance podcast.
All right. So here we are. This is the big moment. So this
feels ridiculously nerve-wracking.
All right. Well, let's cheers to it and just dive in.
Why does this feel like such a big deal? This feels like a massive deal.
Well, because this, and we can get into this more later, but just, so we're going to sidebar for a second and welcome into the conversation. But it's because this is unlike anything you have ever done before. This is the beginning of us shifting focus for our publishing company. So this is a big deal. Like it is a big deal and it's awesome. It's very exciting. Yeah, we're doubling down on being human, as Joanna Penn likes to say. If you don't know her, look her up. She's fantastic.
There's nothing more human than like ripping the Band-Aid off what you wrote before and slapping it down and being like, I did a thing.
So this is very, very fresh. Okay, here we go. So this is Sketchbook of a Wayward Seer, Laureldale Book 1 by Megan O. Russell. Oh my God. And this is the beginning. Here we go. The 3 biggest lies I told on my first day at Laureldale High School. My name is Ella Day. The Grim Reaper doesn't exist. I don't know how Mr. Carver died in math class. The school halls held the familiar scent of cheap cleaner paired with a blend of coffee, body odor, and perfume. Fluorescent lights dotted the ceiling, and the books I'd been given had seen some wear. But the floors and lockers had been updated in the past decade, offering a vague hope that this school might be better than the last 2. I checked to make sure I hadn't lost the pencil I'd stashed in my hair before closing my locker, then opened the lock once, making sure I remembered the combination, buying myself one last breath before turning to face the horde. 3 girls had stopped in the middle of the corridor behind me. None of them bothered to pretend they hadn't been watching. I raised my hand in an almost wave, giving them a quick smile as I started on my planned path to homeroom. I didn't have to make it far. 2 lefts, then the first door on the right. A teacher stopped as I neared the first turn. She scrunched her lips together and nodded at me. The corners of my lips twitched up in the best greeting I could manage. 4 students clustered behind her, all of them taking their teacher's stillness as an invitation to gawk. I rolled my shoulders back, giving my best imitation of someone calm and put together, hoping my heart would get the idea and stop racing like the walls were about to cave in. I made it to the second left before someone gave up on whispering about the new girl. "What's wrong with her?" The voice came from behind me. I'd run away before letting anyone send me to this hellhole. Run away. Like I hadn't fought my way past the idea a few hundred times. Like this wasn't the least awful option I had left. I didn't let myself look back to see who'd spoken. Starting at a new school by making an enemy never ended well. A blonde wall of a guy reached the door to homeroom just before me. He stepped back, giving me right of way. It took a minute for first surprise, then embarrassment to widen his eyes, like he hadn't realized who he'd been letting by. I ducked my chin, looking away before I could watch his shock sink into pity. My heart beat even faster, shoving pressure up into my throat as my new teacher stood before I'd even reached her desk. I loosened my hold on my books, pretending my lungs weren't trying to shake me into tears with every breath. "It's so good to meet you." The teacher placed her hand on my shoulder, turning my back toward the class as though that would keep them from overhearing. "Would you prefer a seat in the front or back?" "I'm fine either way," I said. "I want to make sure you're comfortable," the teacher said. A laugh broke through the murmurs behind us. She shot a glare over her shoulder. "It really doesn't matter to me," I said before she could speak again. "I don't want you to feel like you don't have a safe space in my classroom." My brain couldn't work fast enough to form the words, "Your performative sympathy is making it worse, so please let me curl up in the corner and wait for this day to be over, or at least let me sink into a desk and pretend to be just another automaton in the factory of public education." "We've still got Rob's desk empty, Mrs. Parker," a voice said. "In the middle of the room?" Mrs. Parker turned around. "Sounds great. I sidestepped out of Mrs. Parker's reach, fixing my gaze on the empty chair 3 rows back, ignoring the sudden silence in the room as I slid into my seat. Perfect. Mrs. Parker followed me to my desk. She leaned down to whisper, "Would you like to say hi to the class?" My heartbeat stopped racing, its speed blending into one constant scream. Sure. I stood, waiting until the shy smile I'd practiced 100 times found its way to my lips before rotating to give the whole class the same endearing wave I'd already resorted to once. The silence thickened as they waited for more. "Give us your name and share a..." Mrs. Parker blinked several times. "Are there any interesting facts you'd like to share?" "I'm an artist. I don't understand the point of decaf coffee. You should start competing to be my lab partner now." I had 7 more options on the list of fun facts in my pocket, but none of them came out. "My name is Ella Day," lie 1. "And you're all gawking at me because I'm an orphan, and apparently this town doesn't offer anything more interesting to whisper about." "Ella," Mrs. Parker said, "my pet peeve is people fumbling around when they've embarrassed themselves by being insensitive pricks. Also, I prefer wet cappuccinos to dry and only enjoy long walks on the beach in the right weather." I bowed to the class. Thus ends the morning sideshow. I sank back into my seat, holding my breath until someone started slow clapping. Maybe I had a slim, vague chance of surviving the rest of junior year. And that's it. I, first of all, want to pat myself on the back because I don't think I messed up once, and that is a feat.
That is a feat.
Me.
I've been I think I cramped my thumb. I was gripping my hands together so hard I hurt my thumb.
Okay. So,
I need an ice.
So how do you feel after hearing your chapter one more time? Because we already read through it once like that an hour ago.
I think my panic point comes with. There's often when I'm writing things, I know what I want for the beginning of the book. I know what I want for the middle of the book. I know what I want for the end of the book. Mm-hmm. But it's the details in between that I sort of let myself discover. But because I'm rolling this story out live, I have to make sure that I have those details in as soon as possible.
Right.
And I mean things like, this is silly, but when she's at her locker, her having a pencil in her hair.
Right.
Because she is an artist, and so having a pencil on hand needs to be natural to her.
This is completely unimportant, but is it like a charcoal or a graphite pencil, or is it just a regular?
It would be graphite because you're not going to stick charcoal in your hair. That's a disaster.
Fair point.
And it would have to be like even not a great graphite if you're just going to be shoving it through there. It'd be a normal pencil for this rather than something fancy because hair. But I want her to just always have that tool so that it's never odd that she's just whipping her pencil out at a weird moment. Like, oh, I'm on a date. Here's my pencil. Because she is an artist and I do need her to have that tool.
Yes.
As like another appendage to her.
Did you talk about why it's important that she's an artist? Like, did you talk about what that has to do with her? And I missed it because I was looking at my watch or something.
No, we have not talked about that yet.
Or is that something you want to hold
I think I want to hold that back.
That's fine.
I think we're not there yet.
All right.
I don't want to overload.
Nope, I completely
But that's
understand.
the same with not overloading this because it's the beginning of the book and I don't want to be like, oh, hey, she's an artist. Oh, hey, she's an orphan. Oh, hey, she's new. Can you guess? I introduced a giant blonde guy. I wonder if this is a meet cute for them.
So thank you for bringing that up.
And it's but I need it to be placed there, but I don't want to shove too much in because I can't go back.
Right.
And balancing that is scary because I've never had to do that before. But, I knew that I was going to have some challenges with this project.
Sure.
And apparently that's one of them.
So I'm glad that you brought up the blonde wall because I have written down here, it's like the way that you highlight characters. And this is something that I've appreciated from you for a very long time. And I can say very long time because you've been doing this for a very long time. Writing books, that is. For over a decade now. For 13 years, you've been writing books.
It's been 84 years.
Yeah, well, that too. But the way that you just a little bit, you just highlight the fact that somebody's important a little bit. Like, for instance, the blonde wall. We know that the way that you described him, it's like, okay, we've been given more characteristics about this guy than anybody else so far. So clearly this is going to be somebody that is going to be present in the story. We don't know how important he'll be, but we know he'll be present. Another couple. Oh, sorry about that. Another.
Well, can I expand on that for a second?
Yes, please.
So this is actually, I did it unintentionally for a long time.
Okay.
But sudden backstory, I took a 200-pound pipe to the head a while ago. And so I ended up in speech therapy for a while. And speech therapy isn't just about like, lisps or something like that. It is actually, it goes even as deep as like teaching people to swallow again.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like it is not just about like actual speech.
Okay.
And so one of the things that we worked on was word association.
Yeah.
And I realized through that process that one of the reasons that if someone is important, I give them usually 2 to 3 descriptors, like tall and blonde.
Right. Okay.
2 things is that then when I come back to them, there's 2 chances for you to have caught on that I've already mentioned this guy.
A blonde wall of a guy.
So then when we go back to him, because spoiler alert, blonde wall of a guy is important. Then we can come back and I can be like the blonde wall of a guy who let me into class.
Right.
And hopefully, theoretically, that'll be enough cues for you to be like, oh, he's the guy who was just polite to her before he knew she was the weirdo who just moved to town.
Right.
So that's why I give those extra descriptors as like boosters. So you don't have to have caught on to just wall, just blonde, just you have more opportunities to follow the line.
So something else I wanted to bring up that is along those lines is that, and I don't want you to answer this necessarily, but I found it to be very interesting that like, first of all, I don't know how Mr. Carver died in math class. And so it's like, okay, so we know to look out for Mr. Carver. Whether or not this is something that has already happened or something that will happen, we don't entirely know yet. I can kind of assume it's something that hasn't quite happened yet, since the first lie was "My name is Holiday." So that's lie number 1. So I'm assuming that's going to happen in the future. Again, you don't have to answer that. The other thing is, and maybe this isn't as important as I feel like it is, but Rob's desk is empty. Why is Rob's desk empty? Like, I'm so interested in finding out why this desk is empty, why she's able to take this desk. What's going to happen if he comes back? Is she going to have to move? I don't know. This is
Do you want...
I don't know.
Is this one of those moments where, like, I should keep the veil in place and be fancy? Or
that's
is
a great
this one
question.
of those moments?
Well, I mean, okay, hold on. Let me take a look at the time.
Are you looking at the runtime of the episode?
I'm looking at the runtime of the episode. Yes, to see if we have time.
If we should get it.
So I think we can leave it. I think we can leave it alone for right now, because I don't think that it is, unless you think that it's important for us to know right now.
I mean, it's not a huge explanation.
Okay, well, go ahead.
Maybe it makes me less cool, but I often will plant things like, okay, there's a desk in the middle of the room that's empty, and I know I want her to be in the middle of the room. That's weird enough. I might be able to use it later.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, well then let's give that desk boy a name, Rob. Now maybe Rob had strep for a long time, or maybe Rob's parents are super rich and have been in Europe for a long time, and it's no big deal.
Right.
But by slipping in a name, then if I need something weird in a few chapters to reference,
okay,
I have Rob in my back pocket.
That's so smart. Okay.
Which normally I wouldn't work on dropping tiny things like that so early.
Yeah.
But because I can't rewind and change it, and I do need her to be in the middle of the room, it was just too easy an opportunity to add the one word instead of "there's a desk empty in the middle of the room." Rob's desk is still empty. So even shorter. So just by dropping the name,
right,
I left the possibility. And either it's just someone who it's a small school, so it makes sense that
Small
they know
town.
Rob's name. There's 72 kids in the class.
Wow.
So you would know
So
it's
small.
Rob's desk.
That's a third the size of what my class was.
So it makes sense. Like, it also proves that it's a small school, that they know whose desk is open.
Right.
And it serves as a possibility for entry.
Oh, wait, this isn't the beginning of the year, is it?
No, it's not the beginning of the
for
year.
her. Yeah.
Yeah. No, putting her in at the beginning
Right,
of the year,
that's
it would be too nice.
Yeah, right.
More torment, more awkward.
Megan likes to torment her characters.
Yeah.
So thank you for explaining that. Now, I don't know if you can talk about this, and I'm not sure what you've mentioned so far, because again, I've been checking podcast notes and such.
When you do that, you make me nervous.
Yeah. So I should explain. I have not given Megan these questions ahead of time. Normally, when you listen to podcast interviews, or maybe not normally, but a lot of times there will be a like notice of what questions we're going to ask. But what I want to ask you, and I think this is pretty straightforward, is can you talk about some of the other paranormal elements of the story of Laureldale? Like, we know that she's a Sibyl, right? Mm-hmm. So we know that there are seers. Can you talk about what other kinds of beings there are?
Well, that's a lot easier than other things I thought you were going to ask. Okay.
Anxiety's fun, isn't it?
Okay. So I wanted to create a foundation for how the paranormal world was divided and created.
Yes.
For this series, and there's a lot of foundation things which go with the thousands of years of
I can
backstory
actually mention that briefly, because I wrote that down, that she is working with, and we can cut this if I'm not supposed to say this, but Greek mythology, but also stuff as recent as Arthurian legends, right? Mm-hmm. So that, I was stoked when you said that, because I remember as a kid being obsessed with King Arthur. I thought it was so cool. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't even know if it's ever going to be fully mentioned and laid out in the book.
But
I know it's there.
Yes.
So because I know that this has to do with the Library of Alexandria, mm-hmm. and then this is from King Arthur, then I know I can use all that information to inform which supernatural creatures and what their social structure is and everything in this world. Yeah, that's a lot. But that's how I did it. And it felt like a good idea at the time. Still feels like a good idea.
I think it is a good idea.
But some of the things that I want to have, and again, this goes deep into the lore. We don't need to jump this deep right now. But that there are fae in this world who can pass as humans. So there are naiads, there are dryads, there are werewolves, mm-hmm. there are witches.
What about vampires?
There are vampires. They're not going to feature very heavily in this book.
I'm out. No, I'm kidding.
They're in book 2.
Oh, okay. So those of you who love vampires, stay tuned for book 2.
Just go away, come back.
No, don't go away and come back.
Don't do that. Please stay with me. This is a terrifying process and I don't want to be by myself. But I want all of those things in there. And I also want to have banshees. And, she says the Grim Reaper. Which is
Irish Gaelic myth, right? Or paranormal, fables? I don't know. Because it's not really mythology, is it?
It is mythology.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's the route. I want to have banshees for that. So I want to have all of these different.
Oh, right, because she's Irish, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that makes sense.
Elodie is Irish. So, her name is Irish.
Yes.
Which is also something you don't need to know right now, because I went on such a deep dive to build every little thing in order to have all the playthings I needed to start this.
So
this is beyond plotting.
No, and that's so that's another thing to touch on real briefly.
There are graphs. The fact that there are family trees. There are maps.
This is the most in-depth I have seen you go into a project, and that's saying something. But you, by nature, are what do we call you? A planter. So you will plant a seed, or many seeds, and then you'll kind of let them grow the way that they do. So it's not, you don't plot every moment, which authors that do that, great. There are wonderful books that are built that way. And then there are people called pantsers who just kind of fly by the seat of their pants. They have an idea and they let the writing, the narrative take them away. But you kind of do a combination of both. Right. So this is leaning much more heavily into plotting than you have done in the past.
Yes.
Yeah. So how are you finding it so far? Is it helpful? Is it more difficult?
I mean, the writing process was the same.
Okay.
It's the same. It's just it's things like planting the pencil. It's things like making sure I have the guy with the wall and the blonde mentioned that soon and not, 1,000 words later, because then it's too close to when they actually meet.
Right.
So I have to budget out those words in between.
Right.
So it's definitely the actual typewriting.
Yes.
Same.
Okay.
The plotting of like teeny tiny like toothpick details. Much more difficult.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of strategy in this that you don't usually have to deal with. Yeah.
Oh, it is.
It's like a chess match.
It's yeah. It is a lot closer to a chess match than a normal,
like backgammon or something.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fascinating. So,
as my eye begins to twitch.
So, I think that we are getting to a point where we should probably wrap it up. So, why don't you talk about what's next? Like, what can we expect next time?
Sure. So, because we are doing a chapter a week, what is going to happen between now and next week is I'm going to finish writing chapter 1.
Oh, and what's happening in the meantime? This is something you had mentioned maybe wanting to talk about. Like, where are we going right after the day after we film we do this podcast episode?
Because I always pick the best time to do everything.
Yeah.
We're actually going to an author and publishing business retreat. So it's like we could be in for a transformational life experience.
Right. Exactly. And that's why you wanted to start this now so that you could come along this journey with us. Like, let's say that we go there and you discover something that you're like, oh, wait. We need to go and do it this way. So you've got something that is very, very raw. Even if it's
are even on the bare blank wall.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we are building this branding from scratch while you are with us.
Also, we haven't found enough apple crates to build our bookshelves yet.
You haven't ordered any apple crates.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
That's a you.
Okay. So you were talking about writing the next chapter.
Oh, so what's going to happen between now and the next episode of the podcast is I'm going to finish writing chapter 1. I'm going to go through it, have a few freakouts about making sure that everything is placed exactly where I need it to be to make sure that the next, 58,000 some words work. And then I will pass it on to this lovely gentleman. We will do a quick go through of it before we hit the next podcast episode where we will officially begin chapter 1 of Sketchbook of a Wayward Seer.
This wasn't chapter 1?
This was the beginning of chapter 1.
Oh, okay.
This was a mini samplet for our very first podcast episode. And from there, we will be talking about, we'll go through the chapter. We're also going to talk about some of the fun world building that I've done because there are good reasons that werewolves love being in bands.
Yes. I had that down as a possible talking point, but I love saving that.
For next time. We're going to save Werewolf Rock Stars.
So when you talked to me about that last night, I was like, what?
It makes sense. It makes so much sense.
It does make sense.
So we will go through that. We will go through some other things that are happening in the publishing process right now, like how things are going with the cover creation process. And we are working with some more people to find out the finer points of how we want to do the Kickstarter. So we will share that point with you, as well as where exactly the chapters are being published as they are released.
Yes, because we've got to figure that out. She is polling some of her well, I call them super fans. They are incredible people. And asking them where they like to get their serial reads. So we're sourcing a lot of different opinions
to make
and
sure
ideas.
That everything is on the best platform for everybody.
Absolutely.
To be the most easily accessible. So that is what you have to look forward to the next time. The end of chapter 1.
Excellent.
More insight into the massive amount of world building. Some insight into where we are in the publishing process. And it's going to be great. And we'll have a new craft beer because,
Yes, we shall. We will do that.
Anxiety and beer, they are good friends.
Well, also, it's fun because we are artists and brewers are also artists. Like we do craft brews because that is an artistry in and of itself. So also I want to clarify that even though these first 2 episodes are kind of like in a 2-parter, right? That following that, it is going to be a chapter every episode. That is the plan. Okay. So don't think that we're like doing a what was it, the Hobbit movies that split the final one into 2 when you really didn't need that? That's not what's happening here.
No, this is Tune In on ABC. Every week there is going to be a new chapter.
Perfect. I love it. Great.
We may take a Christmas break. We'll see how it goes.
Oh, sure.
But it's going to be a new chapter every week. Come hell or high water or hurricane season.
Yeah. We live in Florida, so hurricanes. Fun. Yeah.
I think we've done it.
I think so.
I think we did the thing, and I didn't actually have a panic attack.
I am very proud of you. Well done.
Neither of our cats had a panic attack.
Yeah, that's true. And I even
I'm
left
proud
the door
of
to the
us.
room open just in case.
I didn't have a nervous breakdown about the title of the book.
Good job.
I think we're doing great.
Soft high five. So that we don't blow out the mic.
So then this has been the first episode of the Page by Page podcast.
Yeah.
If you are listening to this as a podcast, like and follow. If you are watching this as a video, follow, comment.
Yes,
do
please
all those
leave a
good
comment.
things.
Yeah.
If you are listening to this as a podcast and you enjoy absurd facial expressions, I realized halfway through Chris reading the chapter that my face is absurd when I'm listening to him read the words.
So what we're saying is you should go watch the video.
So if you want to make a bunch of memes, it's okay. Go steal my face. It's wow. I'm a lot. So this has been season 2, episode 1 of the Page by Page podcast. We will see you next week with the full chapter 1.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us for the beginning of the journey for Sketchbook of a Wayward Seer.
Yep. And until next time, thank you for reading.